Lap 23. Suzuka, 190 miles per hour. And then, nothing but grass, dirt, and a barrier coming up fast. Oliver Bearman had no warning. No time to brake. No time to think. Only time to survive. 50 kilometers per hour of closing speed. 50 G of impact. And one question echoing through every garage, every boardroom, every driver's helmet on that grid. How long before someone doesn't walk away? Because this wasn't a racing incident. This wasn't driver error. This was a regulation, written in simulation rooms, finally meeting reality at 190 miles per hour. And the most terrifying part? Every single driver in that paddock saw it coming. Before the Japanese Grand Prix even started, Fernando Alonso stood in that paddock and said something that should have stopped everyone cold. He said overtakes in 2026 are not really overtakes. They are evasive maneuvers. Nobody put it on the front page. Nobody stopped the race. And then lap 23 proved him right. Here's what actually happened and why it was never a surprise. Under the 2026 regulations, Formula One cars carry roughly 350 kilowatts of electrical power, nearly half of total power output. Managing that energy across a lap means constant decisions. When to harvest, when to deploy. When a car harvests on a straight, it slows down. Not dramatically, not visibly. The driver's foot is flat on the throttle. The engine sounds normal, but the speed is dropping. This is called superclipping, and it creates something Formula One has never seen before. Two cars, same straight. One harvesting, effectively braking without touching the pedal. One deploying, accelerating hard. A closing speed so violent, so sudden, so invisible to the following driver that by the time the gap disappears, there is no gap left. Franco Colapinto was harvesting. Bearman was not. 50 kilometers per hour of speed differential appeared in an instant. Bearman swerved left onto the grass at over 190 miles per hour, crossed the track diagonal, LOY, and hit the barrier with 50 G of force. He climbed out, limping. X-rays showed no fractures. He was lucky. Devastatingly, impossibly lucky. But that was just the start. Because drivers had warned the FIA about exactly this scenario at the Friday briefing, 2 days before the race. The stewards were told. The closing speeds were flagged. The race went ahead anyway. And on lap 23, exactly what had been predicted happened. The FIA had already made changes. Before Japan, they reduced the energy recovery limit from 9 to 8 megajoules. Extended the straight mode zone to include the 130R approach. It looked like action. It felt like a response. But those changes addressed qualifying. One car, one lap, controlled conditions. They did nothing. Absolutely nothing. For what happens when 20 cars are running different strategies, different energy cycles, different recovery states, all on the same piece of asphalt at the same time. McLaren's team principal Andrea Stella had flagged the closing speed problem publicly before the season even began. The Grand Prix Drivers Association had raised it in collective briefings. Individual drivers had described near misses in practice sessions across every single race weekend. The FIA adjusted the parameters for qualifying and left the race conditions untouched. And this is where the story gets dark. Because Carlos Sainz, director of the Grand Prix Drivers Association, delivered the line that should terrify every single person in Formula One's governance structure. He said, "Imagine this happening in Baku, or Singapore, or Las Vegas, because those circuits will come, and they do not have spoon curves runoff area. They have walls." After Bearman's crash, the FIA released an official statement. Careful language. Measured tone. Meetings are scheduled in April. Changes are coming for Miami. Adjustable parameters exist within the regulations. A structured review was always planned. But buried inside that statement was a phrase that told you everything. Any speculation regarding the nature of potential changes would be premature. Translation: they know there's a problem. They don't yet know the fix. What carries more weight than the official statement is what happened inside the room. Sainz confirmed that FIA Singles Director Nicolas Tombazis told drivers directly, changes will be made for Miami. That's the real confirmation, not the press release. The conversation behind the closed door. Now here's what makes this genuinely complicated. The solutions being discussed aren't simple. Every parameter in the 2026 energy management system is connected to every other. Change one, and it cascades. Sky Sports F1's Bernie Collins outlined 3 main options. S. First, reduce the amount of battery charged and recharged through the lap. Closes the speed differentials, but cars get slower. Second, increase fuel flow, shifting power back toward the combustion engine. But it doesn't hit all teams equally. Different architectures, different fuels, different radiators. Winners and losers emerge immediately. Third, and this came from Andrea Stella himself, a 350 km/h super clipping limit. A hard ceiling on energy harvesting at the highest speeds. It doesn't eliminate the closing speed problem entirely, but it eliminates its most lethal version. The version that put Bearman in a barrier at 50 G. Oliver Bearman walked away from Suzuka. That outcome was not guaranteed. The spoon curve runoff area made survival possible. Miami street circuit has no such mercy. Walls line every straight, every corner, every inch of that track. And the consequences don't stop at safety. Lewis Hamilton, in the same weekend, lost a podium not to a rival's pace, but to a 15% MGUK clipping deficit that turned his Ferrari into what the telemetry described as hitting an electrical wall 300 meters before the braking zone. A car that appeared to be running flat out, but was being strangled by its own energy management software. He was passed by cars that were slower through the corners, but had a full tank of electrical energy on the straights. Hamilton said it himself, openly questioning why Charles Leclerc seemed to have more power in the same machinery. This is the same problem wearing a different face. Super clipping isn't just dangerous between cars. It's creating chaos inside them. Unpredictable power delivery. Inconsistent torque fill. Drivers managing energy like, and this quote is extraordinary, a 1920s telegraph operator just to stop the car from shutting down. The championship picture is already distorting. Mercedes builds a more usable car. McLaren combines efficiency with pace. And Ferrari, the most storied name in this sport, finds itself in what technical analysts are calling regulatory and engineering purgatory. The 2026 regulations were designed to reset Formula One. Instead, they've created a hierarchy where some teams have already figured out how to live inside this framework, and some are still fighting for survival inside it. So where does this go? Scenario 1. The FIA delivers meaningful change before Miami. The super clipping limit arrives. The closing speeds compress. And Formula One enters the Florida weekend having learned its lesson at Suzuka rather than repeating it somewhere it cannot afford to. Scenario 2. The April meetings produce compromise rather than solution. Teams with competing interests negotiate a watered-down parameter shift. Miami arrives with cosmetic changes and the same underlying architecture. And somewhere on a street circuit with walls instead of runoff, the next incident doesn't end. The same way Bearman's did. Scenario 3. The regulations are fundamentally reformed mid-season. The sport rewrites the 2026 framework in real time. Some teams lose their advantage overnight. The championship standings become a question mark. And Formula One enters its most turbulent regulatory moment since the hybrid era began, not because of politics, but because a crash at Suzuka forced the truth into the open. 3 scenarios. Only one is acceptable. Will the FIA act fast enough? Or will Miami be the circuit that finally demands an answer nobody wants to give? Can software patches and parameter changes fix what is, at its core, a structural problem written into the regulations themselves? And when the cars line up on that Florida street circuit, walls on every side, no runoff, no second chances, will the sport be able to say it did everything it could? One thing is certain. Bearman walked away from 50 G at Suzuka. The next driver might not have a spoon curve to thank.